Have you ever wondered why you can work 12 hours every day, but still not touch the one thing that actually matters in business? Why you get 1 or 2 good days, but then everything falls apart? And when something goes sideways, a client churns or a campaign bombs, you lose hours or maybe days chewing on it. And that costs you more than just a few hours or days. It costs you everything. Because every asset that compounds in your business, your outbound, your content, your referrals, your reputation, resets every time you are inconsistent. And when this happens, you tell yourself you're undisciplined or lazy, or maybe you have a focus problem. Well, you don't. You have a problem, but it's deep within your brain. It's a biological problem that almost nobody knows it exists because nobody really profits from telling you. But these days, it matters more than it ever has, because AI has made a strategy free. Everyone has the same playbook now. The only expensive thing left, the true edge, is execution. And I'm going to explain why you cannot be consistent and the 4 steps to rewire that at the brain level. Now, how would I know this? Well, I've worked with over 400 plus founders on exactly this, from first-time operators to famous influencer CEOs running 9 figures. And I've trained them in execution. I've tracked their numbers. I know what works. So this is evidence-based advice. It's not theory. This is what actually works. And by the end of this video, you're gonna know exactly how to never be inconsistent again. Now, one warning before we start, because step 1 of the fix is the exact opposite of what every motivational video tells you to do. And if you get it backward, my friend, you're gonna be running the 3 steps on a hijacked brain. So let's get started. First, let's understand that how consistent you are has truly nothing to do with you and everything to do with the task itself, because you are already consistent at plenty of things. And here's one thing that proves the whole point. You brush your teeth every day, several times a day, and you've been doing that for decades, correct? I mean, I hope you do. I'm sure you do. Nobody's checking on you, whether you brush your teeth or not, but you were not born doing it. You were trained into it. Someone drilled into you as a kid, rep after rep, until the negotiation with it disappeared. And now you feel wrong if you don't brush your teeth. And same with the gym, if you train. The first month was brutal, month 3, you didn't want to go back, but now it's automatic. So you know how to be consistent. You are consistent in multiple domains that you have trained yourself into over the past decades. But if you look at the hard, high leverage tasks your business needs you to do every day, like outreach or content, for those, you negotiate with yourself daily. It takes you minutes to start, it's easy to get you distracted, and you don't finish clean. So why the difference? Well, back to brushing your teeth. You know when it has happened, you know what the protocol is, and you know the finish line. But with outreach, for instance, you're not clear on how to do it, there's no finish line, and you don't even know if it's going to work or not until hours, days, or weeks down the line. And the whole time, you have no proof of whether you're not wasting your time. So you have that nagging voice that is talking you out of it. And you're the same dude that brushes your teeth every day. So the same training you have in teeth brushing, you must have it in consistent, high leverage tasks that grow the business. As soon as you become consistent on the right thing, your business will take off. But you must understand what is the underlying mechanism, which is simple. You're not a machine, you're a nervous system. Your brain and nervous system have a limited capacity to deal with stresses. Capacity is how much stress load you can carry before you snap. And your role is to expand your capacity by conditioning it. In fact, you've already been conditioning your capacity your whole life. Everything you've been doing until this point, every deadline, every hard conversation, every time you pushed, or every time you backed off, you were training a specific stretch management capacity. Some of it is genetic, but most of it is actually conditioned, trained. And that conditioning sets the limit of what you can tackle every day. And when whatever you need to do, the friction of it stays under your capacity, you execute. You think clearly, you make decisions, you finish things. But when there's too much friction, the load goes above your capacity, you can't execute. And there's no choice here. This is an automatic default. It fires before your thinking brain even has a say. And that's not a metaphor. That's literally how the brain works. When you're under high stress, there's a flood of stress hormones that degrades your ability to think, and older, faster circuits in the back of the brain take off. And you can either fight, freeze, or flight. Fight is when you get angry. when you rage work the wrong thing, or you spend 40 minutes arguing with yourself or someone else in your head. Freeze is when everything locks and you just can't do anything. This is when you can't physically open the email, when you can't do the easy thing you always do because you cannot move. And then finally, flight is when you quit. And this is the most dangerous because when you fly in your day-to-day, you're not really quitting. You don't walk off your desk. You stop spending too much time on stuff that doesn't matter. Email, Slack, admin tasks with clean edges that you know how to do, but they're truly just busy work. They're escape from the hard, high leverage work you know you need to do. That's what your brain does when it's in flight mode. It dresses the escape as being responsible on tasks so you wouldn't argue. And that is what keeps most founders stuck, working on their urgent tasks that don't matter much. And they hustle, they still end tired the day. They work 9, 10, 12 hours, but nothing really moves. The goal is to build the capacity to be consistent on anything and everything. Because once you do this, your whole life changes. Now, this ain't easy because think on outreach again. Outreach is a task that is uncertain. You don't even know if it's going to work. It's unbounded. You never really finish sending outreach. It's unlimited. You can always send more. It's judge. Someone is going to see it and it risks failure. For the most part, it won't work. Like 99 out of 100 times, your outreach doesn't work. So that's a heavy load for your brain. And if you're avoiding it, it's because your brain is just not ready. It doesn't have the capacity to execute on it. And every bit of procrastination, of avoidance, of not finishing what you start is a defensive response to that overload. Now, this is not an excuse. It's not your fault that your brain isn't trained yet, but it is responsibility because that's what all elite founders do. And this is the ceiling to your business. Even if you think you have a lack of leads or cash or clients, whatever, think about what is the root cause of a lack of clients. Well, it's obviously outreach you haven't sent. It's obviously a follow-up sequence you haven't designed. It's an offer that you haven't polish. It's a few dozen conversations with leads on your DMs or your email that you're putting off. All of those tasks are uncertain, unbounded, and judge. And every one of those is exactly the shape of task that your brain doesn't like. And that's not a coincidence. The tasks that grow your business and the tasks that exceed your capacity are the same tasks. And that's the reason why most founders are stuck. And the irony, my friend, is that you know what to do to fix it. In fact, you do it sometimes. Sometimes you just lock in, you send the outreach, you design a sequence, you face the hard conversations. The problem is that it cannot last. Every heroic day that you run is borrowing energy. You're running on panic, really. And what do? You blow past your capacity. Then you can do much. The stress literature for this is called allostatic load. In essence, your body keeps a running bill for every overactivation. So every heroic push, every day of grind isn't free. So when you look at yourself on those days that you can't move, that you're on that freeze response, don't call yourself lazy. You're just depleted. You're on the bad side of a predictable cycle. And getting this right is paramount. Because I know a lot of founders who cannot really do much on a Friday. And they think it's because they ruined it on Thursday or Wednesday. No, they can't execute on a Friday because they're absolutely exhausted. Because every piece of bad news, a churn client, a bomb campaign, or maybe even personal problems, has jacked up their stress in their life throughout that week. And to the point that on Friday, they're exhausted, they're depleted, they cannot do much. They just don't have the capacity to execute. And how fast your brain can lock in after bad news is a key indicator. Because consistent really isn't about how hard you push or how bad you want it. It's about how fast you recover from setback. In essence, it's the distance between your best day and your worst. So capacity isn't really your limit, it's your floor. Elite founders have an insanely high floor. Let me give you a relationship that nobody really explains, but it matters. Capacity, in essence, is how much load and friction you can hold before the brain flips. Regulation is how fast you can come back once it does. It's two sides of the same coin. Capacity is like the size of what you can handle, and regulation is how fast you can refill that capacity. And they train each other. Reps build capacity. More capacity means you flip less. When you do flip less, it costs you less, and everything compounds. That is how you succeed. That's the skill. The supreme skill is regulation. The thing that you practice moment by moment every time you hit resistance. The asset you build is capacity. That is what gets accumulated from the reps. And the output is consistency. That is what the world sees. That is what your revenue feels. And everybody's trying to make you consistent. You can't train consistency. You can't train capacity and regulation. And that is what nobody in the self-help world will tell you. Because they've told you that, if you think about it, consistency is like a discipline problem. That if you're not consistent, you're just undisciplined or lazy. That's bullshit. That's wrong. You're consistent on a zillion things and you have already built a career and a business. You are already trained. The problem is that you're not trained enough. And discipline does not even build capacity, it dispense it. Discipline, if you think about it, is forcing you to do something. It means that withdrawal from your capacity account. And psychology has tested this, by the way. Forcing through suppression works short term, but carries a physiological cost, a stress-related cost that you pay down later. Regulating early is what allows you to sustain the effort. Imagine, for instance, that you're an athlete, right? You must get good at squats for your sport. You don't do that by disciplining yourself to do more squats, right? That would be very stupid. You start at a given load with actual mentors and coaches adjusting for continuous progress. That's how the brain and your nervous system learn. Not by forcing it, not by heroic efforts of squatting that can break your back, but by building capacity about it. That's the whole game. Now, what if you could train your consistency the same way? What if every quality you need to succeed, a strong mindset, a consistent focus, self-belief, they were all skills? Well, they are. They're trainable, but not through videos, courses, apps, books. No, through repetition and feedback. In the same way you get trained in sales, in ads, in fulfillments, in hiring, you bought courses for all of them. You've watched videos for all of them. You have learned them, but you must do and learn in order for it to work. It's the same with consistency, focus, self-belief. Everything you want is the output of a high capacity, well-regulated system. And if you are not born focused or consistent, you can train yourself into it. Because training your consistency is done through one hard task at a time. Ideally, the one you'd happily avoid. And it is done moment by moment, just like you do in the gym. Every time you encounter a hard task you'd rather not do, run this simple 4-step protocol. And notice how it maps to what we were discussing. Steps 1 and 2 is regulation. Step 3 is the rep. Step 4 is the measurement. Step 1, calm yourself. This one is backwards. Every motivational video tells you to get umped before the hard thing. Do whatever you need to face the task. Well, that's the worst possible move because the hard thing is already creating stress in your nervous system. So hyping yourself up adds load to a system that is already about to collapse. So you must do the opposite. The second resistance hits and you feel the stress, regulate. You can do that through breath work. You can do it various ways, but the goal is you get yourself in line first. Then step number 2 is reframe. Resistance, stress without meaning, is rejected by the nervous system. So once you're feeling the heat of willing to quit, of willing to get distracted, of willing to procrastinate in front of outreach, you reframe it. If outreach feels like a waste of time, well, you reframe it as the vehicle to the life you want. If firing an underperformer feels cruel, you reframe it as a necessary step to protect your company. If content feels pointless, you put yourself out there is what makes your business grow. At this point, you're ready for step 3, which is exposure, which is where the capacity building happens. Exposure to the task, whatever the task, outreach, firing, hiring, content is what builds capacity, one step at a time. Just like in the gym, you don't randomly load the bar with as much weight as you can. Hopefully don't do that. You don't do that for outreach. You do 1 rep at a time. And you stop while you're still under capacity. 1 rep short. Into the point that you are deliberately practicing and conditioning your ability to handle the stresses. That is how you do it. And the base container for this in most cognitive work is a 90-minute work session on the hardest tasks. That is not an arbitrary number. It's how neuroplasticity works. The brain rewires through cycles of focus, load, followed by rest. The focus block creates the demand, the rest is where the adaptation consolidates. If shorter than that, you don't generate enough load to force adaptation. Longer than that, you go against your intradian rhythm and you overload your stress. So ideally 90 minutes on the hard thing, then rest 15 to 30 minutes and then go back at it again. And that is how you succeed. Because while the untrained founders will try to do a 12-hour heroic day on outreach and then spend 3 days without being able to do anything and call himself inconsistent, you do 90-minute work session one at a time in which you track your performance, just like if you were going to the gym. Small reps, consistently repeated, increasing load with actual numbers that you can track is what builds the skill you want. Is what gives you focus, what gives you consistency, what gives you self-belief. That's the entire mechanism. Step 4, feedback. The gym tells you immediately. The revenue task tells you in about a few weeks, so you have to manufacture the feedback that's missing. And you score the rep, not the result. The thing is to understand whether you did the thing or you didn't do the thing. Not if it worked, because you may not know if it worked yet, only if you did it. And I've built my whole business on dashboards that you can track the input on. And every real execution hour that gets accounted for ends up giving back revenue down the line. And I've seen this happen hundreds of times. If you give yourself feedback, you can accelerate your progress. So these are the 4 steps: calm, reframe, exposure, feedback. Run it against the task that you're avoiding right now. And you soon start feeling how it stops being heavy, how you stop resisting it, how you start even enjoying it, how you end up looking forward to do it because your capacity increases, because the task no longer exceeds it. Outreach ends up becoming like brushing your teeth. And your mindset about outreach didn't change. Your capacity to handle it for sure did. In essence, you expanded your comfort zone and you made it bigger and bigger and bigger, to the point that you end up becoming unbreakable, like every elite founder. Because every elite founder you admire still gets activated, just like you and me. They still feel the resistance, the heat, the adrenaline pumping. They rather not do that call, have that conversation, do that outreach. That never goes away. But you know what? They have the capacity to handle it. They don't get hijacked by it. Their capacity is so big that they can just channel it, use it, leverage it. They stay in the frame while the room is trying to move them out of it. That is the supreme edge. That's how you become hyper consistent. When your brain and nervous system are trained, everything reads as a challenge. When you're untrained, everything feels like a threat. And it's the exact same stressor. When you're trained, there's a space in between the stressor and your response that you master one rep at a time. And this is contrary to all positive thinking bullshit. This is all about capacity building to the point that you are able to handle everything. In fact, I've seen founders where the higher the pressure, the worse the odd, the more they like their chances. They literally manufacture pressure on purpose so they can perform at their absolute peak. So start training this. Stop wasting time on bullshit motivation and start training your capacity. Because when you train your capacity, anything is possible because you're ready for it. And you already know your numbers. You already know how many sales conversations you need to have to make one sale. You already know how much outreach you need to make to get one sale. There's a bunch of things that you know you should be doing that you're not doing. That's not a knowledge problem. That's an execution problem. And the only thing between you and your goals is your capacity to do what's required to get there. And every asset in your business that actually pays you, like outbound, like content, like referrals, like reputation, case studies, the team you're building, everything does not require heroic effort. It requires consistency. And inconsistency takes you out of the category of things that compound it all. If you're inconsistent, there's nothing you can achieve because consistency is the floor that you can't guarantee. Luckily though, as I said, consistency is trainable through capacity, through regulation. Almost nobody trains it. And that is why it's still the biggest edge available to you. Because everybody's running around with their heads chopped off, trying to get the ideal AI strategy. When what matters is being able to run any strategy for as long as it is needed until you succeed. And that is a function of how consistent you can train yourself to be. If you need our help, the link is below. See you in the next video.